Here we go. Had an audio hiccup. So you guys are probably wondering why there's just random stuff showing on the screen, but I got the audio fixed. There's about a 20-second delay too, so I'm gonna wait 20 seconds. Give me the thumbs up if you can hear me this time. And I'll just kind of keep talking so we can hear. I'll start over a little bit. Okay, yes, so there's no audio. Let's give it another second. 20-second delay on the stream. And there wouldn't be anything from the video itself, just my voice. So tell me if you can or can't hear that. I'm hoping that we've got you covered here now with the audio. How about now? Can you guys hear that? Okay, I think we're good now. So let me start over. I'll give you kind of the short version as we're letting people trickle into the live stream. What you've been seeing here without the audio is kind of our progression into projection mapping. Our initial shows we did last year as part of COVID. It was a great way for people, especially at Halloween time when we weren't sure if people are going to be able to go trick-or-treating. They could still drive by and see some cool Halloween stuff from the safety of their car. And so we got into it for that. My nephew is the master that did our Halloween show and the Christmas ones that you see here. And then since then, I've been kind of his Padawan trying to learn about projection mapping. So all these initial shows that you're seeing here were done in Adobe After Effects, and we're done with an Optima projector. And so as I've been starting to learn this myself, you know, there was a reason why I didn't get into projection mapping sooner. There's two big barriers to getting into this hobby or into this way of decorating. The one is how expensive it is to get a projector that's bright enough and has good enough resolution, and the software and the rest of the hardware can be expensive. And then the second barrier was the skill required to get into it. My nephew already knew After Effects. It's something that I'm having to learn. And what I realize, this might be a little boring, but I'm hoping it'll be encouraging to you as you're getting into it. This is normal. These barriers to entry are normal at this stage in this cool new way of decorating. It reminds me a little bit of when we first started seeing people doing synchronized lights on their houses. You know, the first guy in the neighborhood that was doing it, lots of wow factor, lots of people that were driving by to see it. But what they were doing was something that was expensive and took a lot of time and skill to put together. Fast forward now, and there's synchronized lights everywhere, and it's lost its novelty. My kids are less interested in going to the synchronized houses now. So that the synchronized lights and what I think projection mapping is going to do too is going to follow the same kind of curve that you see in technology in general. You'll at the beginning, when there's very few people doing it, it is going to be expensive. It is going to be difficult. And then eventually the technology improves to where it's accessible to everybody. The cost comes down, and the skill required to get into it's going to come down. So the good news is, I guess, that eventually it's going to get easier and more accessible. But similar to the synchronized lights, if you can get early on, that's where you get to be the coolest kid in the neighborhood, where you get to have the coolest house that everybody's wanting to come see. So I guess the message here is to expect it to be a little bumpy here at the beginning, because this is a new space, a new way of decorating. Expect problems, and just recognize that it's going to be worth it at the end once you have a really cool display on your house. Okay, so hopefully that's encouraging. But this is why I started putting out videos, is because of those two barriers. I had this video almost exactly a year ago where I posed the question, why is it so hard, and wanted to dedicate this year to trying to find some ways that we could close that gap, that we could make it more accessible to more people. And that's when I got introduced to Luxedo. And so Luxedo, all-in-one system, so it can take out some of the hardware considerations, all the custom stuff I had to put together. And then they're really trying to close that gap on the skill level too by making it more accessible. But since we're still early adopters here, it's still going to be difficult. There's still going to be bumpy roads. And there aren't a lot of players yet. There are very few companies that even offer something like this. There's Luxedo, there's Lightform, but they don't offer the same all-in-one system. So there aren't a lot of people out there that are even offering it. So I hope that's encouraging, that as you go through some frustrations, it's normal and it's going to be worth it in the end. Okay. All right. Looks like we've got about 12 in here now, so I'll stop my introduction and we'll just jump into it. How about? So what we're going to start with today, I think we'll do this gingerbread house. I wanted to have something that we could do in roughly about an hour, and just kind of walk you through it. Cool. And this is what it looks like when it's all said and done. Turn the audio off here so I don't get a copyright claim, but it's a simple facade with a little animation and then some decorations. This is what we're going to walk you through today. Okay. And so I'm going to try to walk through every step of the way, because I realize there's going to be people that are more experienced in Luxedo, but also people that haven't never been in here and seen it before. So I'll try to walk through everything. So with Luxedo, it is cloud-based as opposed to a program that you'd install on your computer. You just go to a website and you can log in using your login that you get from Luxedo. And there you'll see your projector or projectors. And originally it was just Luxedo projectors, but now with Luxlink, you can add your Optima, you can add your BenQ, you can add whatever projectors you want, use them and still use the software. So on this landing page, you'll have the projector. The media library is where all the pictures and the videos are that you're going to use on your show. And this, I think this may be where there's sometimes some expectation challenges when there's the advertising and then there's the actual delivery. This isn't a show that you can just put on in everybody's house, but it is mapped to the features of the house. And so it's kind of like you got a bunch of Legos, but you still got to build them. Okay. And so those Lego bricks are the pictures and videos. And in the media library, you'll have some preloaded ones that Luxedo comes with. So if we're looking at Christmas, they've got these ones. And some of these are animated too. I believe these lights are, and I think these ones might be too, they might blink. And so you've got some of these built-in ones, and you can upload your own. So I've got a lot in here. I tried to organize it a little bit before the live stream and just have just the gingerbread ones. And so these are our Lego bricks. This is what we're going to use to build our gingerbread house on our house. Okay, so let's go over to my projects. These are the projects that you're creating, the shows that you're creating to put on your house. And as a side comment, I'm going to kind of keep an eye on the chat, but we may have to kind of wait for questions at the end too, just because I'm not very good at multitasking, and on the sharing screen, I don't see the chats. I have to look on a different screen. So if you have questions, then maybe save those to the end, and then I can make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, so if we come to the projects, these are all my old projects. We are going to create a new project. So you can do that either with the new project button, or this create button is there on pretty much any of these screens. So you can click create, give it a name. You don't have to worry about most of this stuff. You can just give it a name and click create. And then you'll be in your show creation. And at this point, you'd hopefully have your snapshot. That's something we haven't covered in this live stream, is the calibration and creating the snapshot. This is just show creation. And I have a few different snapshots. So I'm going to come up to my projector and my snapshots and grab one that's for the front of the house. Use this one here. And as a side note, while I'm in here, I've got these snapshots. If you've purchased a show from Fit Studios, Digital Pressworks, or if we're doing a show for you, then they're going to ask for a map of your house. And in the Luxedo world, that's the snapshot. And so when you're in here in the snapshots, you can click on this download button to get an image that you can then send to me or whoever's doing your show for you. So if you're having someone doing your custom work for you, that's how you do it. Okay, so I'm going to use this snapshot. And a quick walkthrough on the different parts of this environment. You have obviously your house with the show that's running. If you're using a mouse, I like that best because then I can use my scroll wheel to zoom in and out, and I can right click with my with the right mouse button to move the canvas around. You can use these controls, but I like the mouse. I think it's easier to use the scroll wheel. Okay, so you've got the house itself, and down here where this red line is, this is the timeline for the show. And the default, if we were to just let this run anyway, I haven't put anything on the show yet, but you can see the times ticking by for this show. And I think the default's like 10 or 20 seconds. It looks like it's 10 seconds for the default. So we probably don't want a 10-second show. We're going to want something more than that. So first thing let's do is make this show longer. And to do that, we can come up to this gear icon. This is the project settings. And here's where we can choose what length we want to do. And I've found that it's usually easier to do too big of a project and then trim it back down after the fact than creating it too small and then having to expand it. Just because of the default way things happen when you drag an image or a video in, I like to do longer than I think I'm going to need before rather than do it the other way around. So I'm going to just do 300 seconds here. And also while we're in here, you'll notice that there's this modifier. This is something that's relatively new from Luxedo, and they'll probably add others. They're kind of like last minute touches or filters that you can add to your show. The first one they have is a brightness one, so you can play with that too. The one caveat with that is the higher you go with the brightness, then the higher the chance of it washing out the effects too. So it's kind of a balancing act. All right, so I'm going to do 300 seconds and apply that. Now, if I click through the timeline here, we can see that we've got much longer time to work with, which is good. Okay, so we got the timeline here, and in the timeline, you can see all of your objects, and you can also see them here on the left side. So the ones down here you'll interact with for certain use cases, and the ones over here for others, and I'll kind of walk you through when to use which, because that can be a little confusing. And then you've got, and I'll go more into the layers here in a bit too. Then you've got all these buttons up at the top. The first button with this picture of a mountain is how you access your pictures and videos that you uploaded. So over here on the right side, you'll see the Luxedo ones that we already looked at, and the ones that we uploaded are now accessible. We've got this one that's for shapes and text. If you wanted to put some text like Merry Christmas on the house, you can do it with that. Shapes, they've got a bunch of different shapes that you can put of different colors. This button over here with the line and the two dots is if you want to make something move. So this is what you'd use if you want to have like the garage opening effect that you'll see in a lot of people's shows where the garage opens and then you see stuff happening in there. You can do that with this button. Got other effects that you can do, and this is one area I think is going to expand a lot next year. I'm thinking with Luxedo. Features are, it's a spectrum, and there's always trade-offs. So Luxedo, it's one of its strengths and weaknesses is that it's simple. It doesn't have a massive amount of features. That's what helps make it simple. If you swing the pendulum the other way to something like Adobe After Effects, it has about everything that you can imagine. And if it doesn't have what you need, there's plugins that you can get. And so it's like the sky is the limit. But the trade-off with Adobe is it's really hard to find anything. The learning curve is going to be much better. So when we get back to that idea of how do we close the gap to get this more accessible to more people, the trade-off usually with that is there's going to be less features, less flexibility, because that introduces more confusion. There's going to be more things in here to try to manage. So these are some of the effects, though. You can make something rotate around. Maybe we'll play with that one with the peppermints that we have on the house if we want them to turn. You can have them scale up and down, or you can have them fade in and out, which is one I like to transition between scenes. I'll fade things in and out. Masks I'm going to come back to in a little bit. We've got this button is for broadcasting your audio. This is one of the really cool, innovative things that I like with Luxedo. With my Optima, I had to get an FM transmitter to be able to send it to people's cars as they're driving by to see the show. And so it was additional hardware, and I'm liking this Luxedo radio better. All you have to do is turn it on in here, and people will go to this short vanity URL. It's luxe.do, and you can put this code on your house as part of the show, and they just type that in, and then they can hear the audio. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. And then we've already been on the gear icon. This is some of the project or the show details. Okay. Now, another thing I am big on is the philosophy of saving early and saving often. Nothing is more frustrating than spending a whole bunch of work on something and then have something go wrong with your computer and you lose your work. So you'll see me clicking up on the save button quite a bit just to save my work, so I don't lose anything if something were to go wrong. Once the show is completely created, then you go to this camera icon to render the project. Rendering is a term that's used with video editing and in Adobe After Effects. But essentially what this is going to do is going to make it available to play on your projector. Because as of right now, when we're looking at it here, it's just kind of a preview mode and it's just in the Luxedo software. Rendering it will allow your projector to actually play the show. Okay, hopefully this is making sense so far. Let's talk about layers and masks, and then we'll be able to start creating our show. So layers, I think of as layers of a cake. And you're going to start with the cake itself, and then you'll put some frosting on it. And then after the frosting, start putting candles and flowers and glitter and other kinds of things, whatever you like on your cake. And so a gingerbread's kind of a good show to work with because it goes right along with that. So if our house is the cake, or a gingerbread, then we're going to build it that way. We're going to start with our gingerbread walls, and then we'll start adding the frosting, and then we can start adding the bits of candy just like you would in real life. And so with layers, you're going to have a layer for each of those steps. And so there are some common layers that I'll do for shows, regardless of the type of show, regardless of the holiday. I like to have one for the windows and the doors. So maybe we'll just make this one that layer. To change the name of the layer, you can just right click and choose rename. Let's call this one windows and doors. And anything we want in the windows and doors, we are going to put on that layer. You can click this plus sign to create another layer. Let's do one for the whole house. Whole house would be if you want to have snow falling or other effects that are meant to cover the entire height and depth of the house, where it's not heavily masked. Now, as I'm adding these layers, though, here's the other thing to keep in mind. Just like on the layers of the cake, whatever's on top is what's going to show. So if this is meant to cover the entire house and the entire show, then I actually am going to drag that to the top of the list. Whatever's on top is going to show over the things that are beneath it. So here we got something that can do the whole house. We've got our windows and doors. And I think for this house, now some houses you'll just be straight on, which is actually kind of nice because that you don't have to mess with the perspective. On our house where we have the projector, if I were to just shine everything directly onto the house, then that kind of gives away the illusion. What I prefer is that the house looks like it's the actual made of gingerbread, not just a screen, a fancy screen for my projector. And so to make sure we have that illusion, we have to account for these angles and planes since we're not looking straight on. And so I'll show you how to do that as we're dragging the images in, but I think I'm going to consider that too with my layers. I've got this top face and I have a garage face and this one over to the right that are all kind of on the same plane. And so I'm going to create a layer just for that. These, I don't know what I want to call it. We'll just call it front facing walls. So this layer is going to be anything that I want to put on those faces that are all kind of oriented the same direction, if that makes sense. And then we've got the side wall that's going to be at a different angle, and I'm going to create a layer for that as well. Sidewall. And some of these things are just preferences. You don't have to do it this way if you don't want. With something like Gingerbread, it might be more forgiving. If I were to just drag a piece of gingerbread over here, the texture is such that you wouldn't actually probably be able to tell if I don't have the right perspective. Okay, so maybe it doesn't matter for the gingerbread. But when I have other types of textures, like in our Halloween show where we've got wood or we've got brick or stone, if I were to have a brick wall just covering this entire house and the angle and perspective of the bricks don't match, then that's where it becomes a problem. So I just got into the habit of doing it this way. All right, so we have a layer for each wall. What else are we going to want to do on this house? We're probably going to want to do something on the roof. So let's add a layer for the roof. And then that the little spaces in between, the eaves and the gutters would probably be the next main thing. So let's create a layer for that too. I'll just call that our trim. And the trim, I think I'm going to have that, I want to have it at least above the walls so that I make sure that it's on top of the gingerbread. Hopefully this is making sense so far. Let's go ahead and start building the actual show. Oh, and I did forget about the masks, but I think I'll introduce that as we're building the show. I think that'll make more sense. Okay, so first layer we're going to do is the gingerbread walls. And so I've already uploaded a bunch of different things. Usually for these textures, I just go on Google and find something find a tile, something that I can easily copy and paste and repeat to make it look somewhat seamless. And so I've got one of those tiles here. I have a gingerbread square that I can, so let me remind you how I got here too, just so I'm not going too fast. Clicking on the mountain thing again to bring up the pictures and images. And then over on the right side, you have all of those available. And so I'm going to go to my gingerbread tile and we'll drag that onto the house. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with Luxedo, when you drag it onto the house, which layer is it going to end up on? We've got all these layers we created. It's usually will default to the first layer that you created in your project. So if you remember, that was our windows and doors, was our very first layer. And so that's where everything's going to get dragged onto. And that may not be where you want it. I don't actually want the gingerbread in the windows and doors. So I'm going to come over here and I can drag this down to where I want it. This one we're going to do for our front facing wall. So I'm going to drag it to there. And now we'll see it in the right place. Another little quirk that you'll notice too is that I had the file named gingerbread something or other, but it renamed it down here. I wish it wouldn't do that. I wish it would retain the name. But what we can do is come down, we can rename it. We can rename it to match. And so we don't lose track of what it is, especially because as we build this out, you're going to have a lot of images and a lot of videos, and that's going to get really confusing. To rename this, we're going to come down to, I mentioned that you can see the layers and the assets both down on the timeline and over here on the layers. To rename, you have to come down to the object down on the timeline. Oh, actually, no, I'm wrong. I think you can do it. Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember it. So down on the timeline, you can click on it. Once you've clicked on it, you'll get this blue and white bars here, and then you can name it whatever you want to. Gingerbread. And I'll show you what these do in a little bit too. Okay, now I got my gingerbread tile. And we can grab these handles to resize it. You can also click on this square up at the top to rotate it. And so this one is going to be, I'm going to use something like this for the garage, the top and the side, so I can drag it roughly into the right spot and size it down a bit. Now this is going to be less obvious with Gingerbread 2 than with brick. But one of the challenges I've run into with Adobe and with Luxedo is once I have the tile, if I want to start copying and pasting this, then pretty soon I'm going to have a whole bunch of these tiles cluttering up my workspace. That gets to be kind of a nuisance. I'd rather keep this as clean as possible to make the show creation easy and fun. And so rather than copying and pasting this across the entire face of the garage, I've found that I'm doing some prep work in third-party tools to get the images and to be easier to work with projection mapping. So what I've been using a lot lately is Canva. You can use Photoshop. There's probably a million different tools out there. For videos, you can use one called capwing.com. Canva is the one I use most often to take something that's a tile, such as this one, but then spread it out so that it could cover an entire wall. And then I export that as an image that can be imported into Luxedo. And that's what this one is. This is the one that's been prepped so it can cover an entire wall without having to copy and paste. I'd much rather work with 1 or 2 files than a whole bunch of files. So I'm actually going to delete this one from my workspace. I can highlight it here and just hit the delete key. And instead, I'm going to use the one that is bigger. It's been tiled, it's been prepped to cover the whole house. There we go. Kind of curious too to see how this works while I'm streaming and trying to deal with the cloud-based system. We'll see how that goes. But this image is made up of a bunch of those tiles, and it looks pretty seamless, which is nice. Okay, so let's put this on the garage. I'm going to roughly size it the way I want. And I also forgot that, yep, it defaulted to that windows and doors. So I'm going to go put it back where I want it. And I'm going to rename it Gingerbread. And this one I'm going to call Gingerbread Garage. If my house was straight on, that's probably all I'd have to do. And then we can do some masking out, which I'll cover in a little bit. But since I've got this angle to the wall, then I'm going to try to match that perspective. And that's what the skew button does. Simple is just if you want to resize it and rotate it. But if you want to match the perspective, then you click on skew and it's going to give you little circles that you can use. And then all you have to do is click on those circles and line them up with the edges that you want. And projection mapping can be kind of the worst nightmare for an OCD person trying to get this stuff all perfect. I am not going to shoot for perfection on this live stream because that would probably get boring for everybody. I'm going to get good enough just to show you guys how to do it. We'll put that right there. Now we've got a garage wall of gingerbread. Cool. Save early, save often. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing for the top wall and this wall. And so I don't have to drag in the object every time. If it's already in my project, I can come down here on the timeline, make sure it's selected with the blue and white stripes, and I can right click on it and copy. And then I'll right click on the black space right near it and click paste. And now I have 2 of those. Cool, now I got 2 gingerbreads. And I can move this one to where I want. Now with the top part of the house, we've got kind of an added interesting dynamic, right? Because it's not square. So I'm just going to try to get the perspective close, and then we'll worry about that when I get to masking. But I don't think I need to really change much. That's probably good enough, especially because gingerbread, you can't tell as much if it's the right angle. So we'll call that good. I still have the original one in my clipboard, so I can come down, right click on the black space and click paste again. And drag that over to this side. And I'll adjust the points here a little. Got these steps here, but we're just going to pretend those don't exist for simplicity's sake. And there we have it. We've got those 3 walls covered. A couple of things you might notice too, that as you get more and more files in here, sometimes it can be tricky to know which one I'm clicking on. And maybe I'm clicking on a candy cane to move it, and I accidentally move my gingerbread layer. So some things that can help with that is any of these layers, when you're not working on them, you can click this box to lock it so that you can't inadvertently change anything. If you want to see something that's behind the layer 2, you can also hit the eyeball and hide these layers so that you can see what's behind it. Okay, so that can be helpful, because especially as you get bigger shows, then it's going to be very difficult to keep track of what's what, and you're going to end up moving things you didn't mean to. All right, so now let's talk about masks, because especially this top part may have the right perspective, but it's shining above the house onto my neighbor's tree or into their window or something, and I want it to be just on the house itself. So what masks do is help you define where that layer, where that image is going to show up. And to do that, we're going to create masks on this button here. We're going to click the button with the square and the circle inside. And we'll create, over the course of this project, we'll create quite a few of these. And it's just a way for us to control where the image and the video is going to be seen. And so I'm going to create a new mask. After I click on that, you come over and click create new mask. And I almost always do trace. That's just me. You can do these shapes, and then it'll have the control points that you can drag to make sure it matches. But I've found trace just is easier, because then all you have to do is click and draw the lines. Now my gingerbread layer is in my way, so I can't exactly see where to do this. So I'll click the eyeball to hide it. And then it's just a matter of clicking on these corners, and you'll see a red line that starts to form. And then a faint yellow line. That is your mask. That means it's going to only show that image in that space. The step I always forget, though, is I have to tell it which layer I want that mask to apply to. So select layer, and this is for our front-facing walls. I always forget that step. Now let's give it a name too, so we can keep track. This is the top wall. And it's got similar options to resizing an image. You can do simple, or you can do the polygon. In this case, I will almost always do the polygon. It's also, you don't have to worry about getting it perfect the first time with the polygon, because you can just get the rough one, and then you can come back in here and mess with it to get it right where you want it. So don't worry about getting it perfect the first time. Click save on that. Now, if I re-enable this layer, there we go. It only shows up on that top part. But wait, where'd my other ones go? Well, we told it to only show things that fall within that mask. So in order for these to show up, we need to create masks for those as well. So I'm going to create a new mask, trace, connect the dots so that my garage one can show up. Garage wall. Select the layer. And there we go. There's that one. Let's do one more for this side of the house. I guess I'll go around the stairs roughly. Right wall. Select the layer. And there we go. Now we've got gingerbread on those 2 layers. Cool. So now we're cranking. We're gonna do the exact same thing now for this side wall. I'll go to the user content, the images, grab my gingerbread layer, drag it onto the canvas. It defaulted to the windows and doors layer, so I'm going to put it down to the side wall. So that's down here. Let's give it a name. And let's get this roughly the way we want it. Now, as I'm skewing this, a couple observations or a couple comments. Rendering will take longer with certain types of effects. One of those is skewing. The more skewing you do, the longer it's going to take for rendering. Another thing that causes a lot is the more layers you have, then the longer it's going to take to render. The longer your show is, it's going to take longer. And then as you have bigger files you're putting in, if you have massive pictures or massive videos, then that's going to slow things down too. And that's another use case for something like Canva or Capwing. If you can keep your videos and pictures relatively small, then that's going to speed things up. So we'll get that good enough. Click save on that. And then let's hide it and do a mask real quick. Not going to worry about too much perfection. I'll just go to there for now. Sidewall. And this one's going to be our sidewall layer. It's helpful having my masks with similar names to the layer so I can keep track of it. Now if I put that back on, and there we go. We've got our gingerbread texture ready to go. So what should we do now? I think we'll do the icing next, the trim, put some icing around the edges. And so we'll put those on this layer. This time I think I'll do it a little different. Instead of doing the masks after the fact, I think I'll do the masks before, and then they'll show up right where I want it to, and then you can kind of see how that works. So let's create some masks that will be just the trim here. Trace, and I have a choice here as I'm doing this one. I could have it be just on the gutter, but I also have a my icing happens to be a transparent image, and so that means the background of it would show up just fine. And so maybe I don't want it to be just on the gutters. Maybe I want it to be down here a little bit. So maybe I'll make my mask just a little bit bigger than I otherwise would, so I can have bigger frosting. Another side note, if you want to add additional points, you can at any time. You can just click on the line, and then you'll get additional points that you can drag around. Garage trim. Select the layer. Then I need to do ones for these other two sections. So I'm doing this one bigger than I need to because I want it to be a little bit bigger than just the gutter. Top trim. And one more mask. Side. All right, I've got the masks ready, and you'll see here my masks are starting to pile up a little bit, but they're organized by layer. So let's go to our images again and get some icing. This checkerboard pattern behind it is what indicates that it's a transparent image. And that's something that's really easy to do in Canva. If you have an image that isn't already transparent, you can put it in there and remove the background, as well as saving it as transparent. The images are much easier to do that than videos. So I've got this one. This is one I prepped in Canva. It was a short section of frosting, and in Canva I made it longer. And so I put that in there. It's on the windows and doors layer. I could probably put it roughly where it's going to be before I move it. Let's put that on simple for a second, just adjust the angle. And as soon as I drag this to trim, that mask is going to be applied. I've got a little bleed over there, so maybe I will scoot it this way. There we go. Now I've got beginnings of my trim. Let's name it real quick. And I'm going to need several of these. I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more to do the roof line. So I'll select it down here, right click, copy, right click on the black space and paste. Then I can move this one where I want it. That one lines up reasonably good right off the bat. Let's get another one. Okay, this one I need to change the angle on it. And I can do that again with this square at the top. Change the angle and slide it into place. Now you can see some of the unintended consequences of how I chose to do my masks and how long this is. It's starting to bleed over into this one. But if I drag it down too far this way, then it bleeds into the others. So there's different ways that we can handle that. I think I'll probably just adjust my mask a little, scrunch it up so that it's hiding this part. I'll do that here in a little while. But let's get this part done. Paste another one. Get up here at the top. Looks good enough. And you can see how these really start to pile up after a while. That's where it can get a little difficult to keep track of what object you're messing around with. And that is actually another time when I would start to create another layer. If my layer is getting cluttered and I start making oopses because I'm clicking on things I didn't mean to or moving things I didn't mean to, then I'll create another layer as a way of insulating and containing. All right, one more, then I'll fix my mask. Get that the right angle. Same kind of thing with this one bleeding over to my other mask, so I'll just scoot it so it's like that. And for the sake of this live stream, I won't worry about some of that, most parts. Okay, let me just adjust my mask. I can go back to the masks button, go to my garage trim mask and click on the polygon. So I have those little dots, and this is the one I'm gonna scooch up a little so that it won't be covering my garage too much. There we go. That's looking pretty clean. So there we go. We've got garage on the tops of the house. And if you wanted, you could just do the same thing to do frosting all along the edges if you want, but you get the idea. That's how you can add frosting. All right, save early, save often. And quick time check. We've been about 45 minutes into this. I've scheduled this for an hour and a half. We may not finish this completely because I want to make sure we got time at the end for questions. But let's see, what should we tackle first? I think windows would probably be good next. So yeah, the windows and the doors. And with the Gingerbread hiding those features underneath it, I think I'm going to turn off the walls for a little bit so I can see my windows and doors. And then let's click on our images. I have this window that we could do. That one would probably look good in these two windows here. I'm going to drag that onto the canvas. And this time the default of putting it on windows and doors. Perfect. That's exactly where I want it. I'm going to give it a name, stained glass. And I think we can just do, well, I may skew it. We'll see how it looks. I'm going to shrink that down to size. If I were doing this for my house and had the time, I would do these individually for both windows. But I think for brevity, we will just do one that covers both houses because you won't be able to tell a whole lot anyway. And yeah, let's skew it a little so that that matches the perspective. I'm going to drop this edge down And that might look good enough there, actually. Now it's not masked yet, right? We haven't created any masks. I'll go back in and do that here in a little bit, but let's put something in this window too. I found this kind of cute gingerbread living room scene. So that might be kind of fun as you're looking in the window that you're looking into the living room of a gingerbread. So that's it's kind of fun. Put that down here in the window. The simple one is a little simpler to use when you can get away with it. So I'm going to do simple on this, at least till I get it roughly resized, and then I'll skew if I need to. Get that to roughly fit the house, and I'll mask it out later. I think we'll call that good for now. Your living room. And let's do something for our door. We've got this door that looks cookie-esque. So this one has a white background. It is not a transparent image. So that one I could either put in Canva to prep, but since I'm going to put a mask around the edges of the door, then it probably doesn't matter in this case. I'm not going to worry about it this time. The rough perspective, you can kind of toggle this on and off too to see how you're doing lining things up. You can do it after the mask's there too, so we'll call that good. Call that door. Now these might bleed over a little bit, so I'm going to put my living room image above the door because, you know, once I mask this out, only the left side of the door is going to be visible, and then the living room. So I'm just putting that order the way I want it. And then the other door we have is a garage door. So I have these dancing gingerbread men from a good friend of mine, Jeff Ropalato. He's got this on his YouTube channel. We're going to put that in the garage. This is our first video we're putting in. And so that can slow things down quite a bit. In fact, maybe I'll wait. Maybe I'll wait on the videos. Then I'll put it in at the end, and that way it'll still go reasonably well. Because what you can do that I haven't shown you yet is as you're building this, you know, we don't have any animation yet, so it's going to be pretty boring. But to play your project in preview mode, you can press play here, and it'll go through the show. There's just nothing for us to see here. Caveat with this, and this is the same in Adobe, this is going to be really slow, and it's going to become increasingly slow the more things you add to it. So if you've got a simple project, it won't be a problem, but the more things you add, this is going to be sluggish, and you won't be able to see how it really looks. And so what I'll do is try to get it close. You know, I can kind of click around in the timeline to make sure it's doing what I want, but then I'll come up and render it. And once it's rendered, you can actually download it to MP4, and I'll play it that way, and then I can see how it looks a little bit better in real time. Yeah, so let's wait on the garage. I think we'll wait on the garage. We'll do that last, just so things are going smooth. Let's put some masks around these. I'm going to hide the layer so I can see the windows and doors. Masks. And throw a mask around each of these. You also have the choice of doing just the window, or in my case, it's so white. My house is so light colored. I want to make my windows a little bit bigger, so I'm actually going to do my mask and my window a little bit bigger than reality. Left window. Select my layer. Right window. Come down to these ones. This is a bigger window, so I'm going to do it true to the actual window. It has this little jut in the bricks. And two more. We're going to do the door and the garage door. once you kind of get into the rhythm, then it can be pretty quick. All right, let's turn that layer back on. And there we go. I probably need to adjust the door a little bit if I were going to take the time, but for our purposes, this will work. If I turn the gingerbread back on, then you can start to get a feel for how this is gonna look. It's looking kind of fun. All right, so we've got our windows, we've got a living room scene. Let's start adding some candy. How about? Go back to our image library. I've got a few things. Oh, I haven't done the roof yet. The roof is going to be the same as the others though, so maybe I won't do that unless we have time at the end, but it's going to be added to the roof, and then use the skew to make sure that it matches that steep angle that you have on the roofs, and then you mask it out, and then that's kind of a fun texture for the roof. The images are going to be pretty easy though too, because we don't even have to mask these. This part's easy. So if I want to put a couple candy canes on either side of the garage, all right, well, I'll just drag them over. They defaulted to that layer, so I'm going to drag it down to the front-facing wall. But now that we're getting a lot of things in here, the order that these are in still matters. Whatever's on top is going to show on top. So this candy cane is at the bottom of my gingerbread layer, so I'm going to drag it to the top, and now it'll show above. Let's name that candy cane. And let's shrink this down to fit. Now this is another thing that you might end up feeling frustrated with the masks and the layers and everything else. It can sometimes, if you try to move an object, it doesn't behave as you might expect. If I try to click over here where it's not on that same layer, it might, yep, it did what I thought it would. It actually thought, oh, you're clicking over there, you want to go on that layer. I'm like, no, I was wanting to do the candy cane. And so that can be frustrating. The way I've found to deal with that is don't move the image unless you can actually see and click on the image itself, rather than clicking over here where you can't. And if you can't see the image yet because it's on some other layer, I'll move the handles around until it comes in frame. So that's just a little idiosyncrasy, I guess, that I've learned to work with, that you can use. If you can't see the layer, then don't try to move the layer. Adjust the handles until you can. So I'll put a candy cane over here. Looks fun. Let's do one on the other side too. Now for perspective, this candy cane would physically be farther away than that one. So let's make it a little smaller to match what the real perspective would be. Looking good. Throw a couple peppermints on here. Put that at the top. Give it a name. Let's resize this sucker. Pun intended. All right, it's a mint, not really a sucker, but yeah, so this is where I might end up running into trouble if it ends up off the screen. There we go. Let's put it over here. Cool. Now, for fun, this is something I haven't played around with a lot in here, but if we wanted to have, on some of the shows I've been creating for people, we have the peppermint just kind of spinning. So let's see if we can do that in here. Let's introduce some effects. So if I have the peppermint selected, these are basically the effects that you can apply. That, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is one where you can move it across certain path. And this one you can do rotation, scale, fade. So let's try the rotation one. I haven't used this a lot, so this might be interesting. But what it's going to do is you choose the time frame that you want it to be rotating. So if I did from 0 to 10 seconds, then it's only going to rotate during those 10 seconds. If I want it to spin continually, which is what I want, then I'll just leave these defaults so it's doing the entire project. Choosing the type of, which direction to go, and then continuous. This is the part I'm not sure since I haven't done it before. I think the way it's going to work like this is over the course of these 300 seconds, it'll rotate, 180 divided by 60. What is that? 3 times. It'll only make 3 rotations. And so that's going to be a really, really slow rotation. So I'm not going to do the math, but let's just bump it up to something like 500. So it'll appear to go more quickly. Click save on that. And I don't know how well this will render in real time, but let's give it a try. See if it's might be something we have to render and then download. Yeah, I'm not really seeing it do much. That's something we'll probably have to check later. But that's how you could do something like rotation. Throw a couple other things on. Let's put a gingerbread tree. Tree. And I think actually I'll put the tree on the side wall. It's pretty blank there. We don't have anything interesting on that section yet. So let's put it there instead. And this is one of those scenarios where I'm going to start locking layers because I don't want to accidentally move the things I already put on that layer. So I'm going to lock that one while I'm messing with the side. Make it a little smaller. And it's facing directly towards us. I'd rather skew it to match the perspective. So I'll click skew and move these around a little. I don't want it to look stretched. It's a little trial and error with this because that just makes it kind of too wide, doesn't it? But I'll just monkey with this until it looks like what I'd expect. That's not bad. Okay, there we go. Now we've got a tree. Okay, and the rest would be more or less the same. The sprinkles is a nice little added touch. Anytime you can add additional textures to your shows, that's going to help them look better. So if I add some sparkles, some sprinkles to this, make sure that's on the top layer. Actually, that'd be probably under the tree, right? We want it on top of the gingerbread, but not on over the tree itself. So there's some sprinkles on there. You can add that to all the different layers and it gives that little extra pop and texture and feel to it. That's probably it for the images. It's mostly doing the same kinds of things over and over again. So let's look at some videos now. Let's add a couple of videos to this and then we'll wrap it up and we'll do some questions. So I've got this video here. I mentioned it's from Jeff Rapalato. I have his channel over here. Let's show you a couple resources. I could put this in the description for the live stream too, but this is a friend of mine. He's got a bunch of different things on here that he's doing to contribute to the industry, to the community, and including these little dancing gingerbread men. And so I appreciate him adding those. Another one while I'm on this thread too is Philip's Projections. He's one of the guys that many of us have learned to do projection mapping from. Excellent tutorials in Adobe After Effects, and he started to produce some effects for us now, and he's got a whole gingerbread candy pack. I don't have those uploaded to Luxedo yet, so I haven't used them, but he's got gumdrops and peppermint and all sorts of cool things in there that you could use for your gingerbread, which is cool. So that's where I'm getting some of these from. Let's put our dancing gingerbread man into the garage. defaults to windows and doors, but that's just fine in this case. That's where we want it. I'm going to drag it down to the garage. And we already have it masked. So I think all we have to do in this case is just line up the perspective with the skew handles. Just curious to see how good this will do while I'm streaming and developing all at the same time. There we go. Save that. I'm guessing if I play this, it's going to be pretty slow with all my network bandwidth getting hogged up right now. Yeah, that's not probably going to happen on a live stream. But there you go. Got the dancing gingerbread men. I also had that layer that we started with that was things for the whole house. So what do I have for the whole house that could be fun? Here's a gingerbread transition. That one would be kind of fun way to wrap it up. You know, at the beginning of your show and at the end of the show, it can have, oftentimes it'll be kind of abrupt where an image will just pop in or just pop off. So transitions are nice to help smooth that out. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can do that in the effects with the fade things in and out, or you can cheat and find a video transition from the internet. I got this one from Production Crate, and it will kind of help cover up that transition and have something fun at the end too. So what this one does, it has like a gingerbread that drops down and then he explodes into confetti. Now it's just a really short clip. So let's see right there, there it is. And what we'll do is put that all the way at the end. So that's kind of the finale or the end of our show. Now this is one thing I prefer in Luxedo over After Effects too. In After Effects, any of these that I'd want to repeat, like if I wanted to just have the gingerbread man on repeat, I'd have to copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. In Luxedo, all you have to do to extend that and have it repeat is to select it and grab this handle on the right side and you can drag it. Now the gingerbread are just going to repeat the whole time. And I could do the same thing with this, but this is really just meant to be something that we see at the end. So I'm going to put it right here at the end. Scrunch that up just a bit. Now I can't see that video on my canvas, and that's because in the timeline, we don't have it selected. If I go to that part of the timeline, then it'll show up. You can see the remnants here actually of the confetti as he explodes. Let me come to that layer, 20, there we go. Make this bigger so you can see it. Now what I'd probably do is make it just slightly bigger than the house and then mask it out. But I won't do that for now. Let's see if this will play enough that you can see what the effect does. Gingerbread drops down and explodes into confetti. Okay. Well, there we have a show. It's a simple one, but these the things that we've covered are what you'd want to create even elaborate ones. It's just doing the same things over and over again. So that might be a good place to wrap up. It's obviously a little left unfinished, but in terms of what things I wanted to cover, I think we covered most everything. And we've got a little more than 20 minutes left. So let's go ahead and answer questions for a little bit. There's a 20-second delay, so I'm going to look at the questions, but with that delay, it might be kind of weird. So let's see, we've got, what about using Luxedo software with your projector? Is it the same? The software side is the same. So I'm going to go back to the home page here. On this projector button, you'd see, instead of a Luxedo one, you'd see your own projector, but the software is the same. And I haven't actually got to try that yet. It's called Luxlink. Luxlink is where you can use their software, but your projector. And so I've got that on my to-do list to try that out and do a video on it. Been so swamped through the holidays, I haven't gotten to that yet. But To answer your question, yep. And then once you're in the software, everything would operate the same. It's just a different projector on this list. So next question is, my house is 55 feet wide and 25 feet high. Will that projector cover my whole house? It probably would. It's a function too of how far away, how much space you have from the house. And I believe the rule of thumb is the width of your house times 0.6 is how far away you'd want the projector to be able to cover the whole thing. So let's see, if it's 25 feet high, that's probably close to what mine is. It seems like it would be fine. The other consideration too, though, is that the farther away, the farther back you get to cover your house, it's going to get less bright and the pixelation is going to be more obvious. And there's another video I want to do sometime where I can show side by side a few different projectors, but the resolution, the pixels with projection mapping, you can see those squares on the house. It's such a big canvas that you can go up to it and see, yep, there's a pixel, there's a pixel, there's a pixel. And so the higher the resolution projector, or the closer you can get to the house, is going to help kind of retain some of that brightness and quality. So that's something to consider too. All right, next question is, so do you not need to make a mask for these images? The masks in Luxedo world are going to be applied to layers. In Adobe After Effects, it can be done on layers, images, videos, and things like that. But in here, it applies to a layer rather than directly to the image. So the image you'll just put on the canvas and put it on the layer you want, and that layer will have the masks that you want to use. Next question, will the software support multiple projectors? Yes and no. You can add projectors in here, and you could schedule them at the same time. So the project scheduler here allows you to say, okay, I want this to kick on at this certain time and run for this duration. The tricky part would be if you wanted to synchronize the two. Like if you had a show where with lights and effects and things that are changing frequently, and you wanted those to be 100% in sync, there'd probably be a little bit of loss in precision, because all you'd be doing is, as you develop the shows, you'd make sure the timestamps match, and then the projection schedule you'd have match. But there might be a little drift. There might be some issues with precision. I suspect, don't quote me on this, but I suspect that next year, Luxedo is going to do a bunch of cool innovation, and synchronization across projectors would be something that I think they would look at, because it's a common problem with people that have bigger houses. They need more projectors, and to make a seamless show that's all synchronized is going to be a great addition to it. But as it stands right now, you add them, and then you just kind of try to get the timestamps to match, if that makes sense. All right. How far do you think the software will take someone as opposed to After Effects? It's a great question too, and it's hard to quantify. And everything's a balance. So, Luxedo is trying to close that skill gap. They are trying to make it easier. And as I mentioned, the trade-off for that is there's going to be less features. So it's the degree to which you're going to want more features and more flexibility and more complexity, then the more you're going to want to drift towards After Effects. But if you just want to create, one or two simple shows and you don't want to put a lot of effort into it, and you certainly don't want to have to gather all the hardware, then Luxedo is going to work really good. But if you're going to create lots of shows and you want to be able to do crazy effects and want that maximum flexibility and maximum features, then it'd be easy to outgrow Luxedo. Where the company, it seems like it's drifting though, is that it won't end up being an or choice. It can be an and. You can actually create a show in After Effects and import it into Luxedo. In fact, I could probably show you that if I still have. Maybe I deleted it. Oh shoot, I deleted it. But what you do for that is, I showed you on the snapshot that you can download that snapshot to your computer as an image. You can put that image into After Effects, create your show, and then you import that MP4 from After Effects into here, just like you would any other video file. And then you would drag it onto your canvas, mask it out, and you're good to go. So that's what's kind of nice is you can make it work the way you want it. If you want to have the benefits of an all-in-one system with Luxedo, you don't have to do any of your own hardware, simple software, cool, ready to roll. If you want to upgrade your projector to one that's a 1080p and 4000 lumens, you can do that and still use the simple software. Then if you outgrow the software and want to do Adobe After Effects, cool. It's all becoming interchangeable so that you can kind of pick and choose what's going to work best for you, which I think is awesome. All right, I believe I will need to synchronize projectors. House is a single story and wide. Yeah, that might be, yeah, that's a common problem. There's some big houses out here, and just one projector isn't going to cut it. And I see that with After Effects too. There are some third-party devices that are also kind of expensive that people are using. That's a problem that I see people throughout this community are trying to solve. And so 2022, I bet you there's going to be some easier ways to do it. And if you find of something, then send me a message because I want to test it out. So let me know if you see something cool. One of my intentions with this channel is to help close that gap to make projection mapping more accessible. So as you find cool new things, then I appreciate you letting me know, and we'll do some videos on it to get the word out. All right, do you know if they're planning to be able to synchronize Luxedo projectors? I don't know for sure what they have planned, because I can ask them. I do know what I know is from my experience with them that they're very innovative and very responsive to their client base. There's a number of features I showed in this demo that I don't think are in some of my early videos because they didn't exist yet. You know, they put a product out there and then listened to the feedback from the customers, innovated, added features. And this is such a squeaky wheel, and there's enough people that want it that's just kind of my speculation. Cool. Barry T got his Luxedo. That's awesome. I'll kind of keep an eye out here for other questions too, but maybe one other thing to cover before we wrap up is where to get some of your effects. And let me find the right tab because I have too many tabs open. So the first thing I would suggest is to keep following us, because I try to share anything and everything I can find. And I actually did do a video, if I can find it in here. This one right here covers a bunch of different places that I find images and videos for our shows. Google's a great place to do it. YouTube's a great place to do it, but there's some other ones that are on here. AtmosFX, HauntWorks, that was started by my nephew when we were doing this projection mapping, and he creates custom effects. So you can look there. Production Crate is another good one. It's this website here. They have tons of videos and images that you can use. So I use them quite a bit. Canva even has some fun ones. Like, it might be worth, I think they have a freemium version. I'm on the premium one and it's not very expensive. I use this for creating my thumbnails and prepping videos, but they have some pretty fun pictures and little short images too. So that can be a good source as well. Okay, so we've got 14 minutes. Let's see, what other questions? Most of the projections I see are on 2-story houses. Mine's 2-story, but it's split level, 2,000 square feet. It's not massive, so it covers mine just fine. 2 Optima, those Optimas are great. I've got an Optima. I started originally with a ViewSonic, and it didn't have high enough resolution for seeing the detail that I wanted, and so I went with an Optima. That's a popular one. Is there software only subscription based? So as I understand it right now, if you buy the Luxedo, there's no subscription. You get it all included. If you bring your own projector and want access to their software, that's where the subscription part comes in. And as I've kind of hinted at, everything's a trade-off. Luxedo, what they are saving me time with is, what I had to put together for my Optima. I had to get the projector. I had to get something to play the video. I used an old Roku, but you have to have something to play it. You have to have an FM transmitter or some way to stream it to people that are going by the house. You have to have an enclosure. I built a box. It's a really ugly box. It's an eyesore for my neighbors, but we built a box to protect our projector from the elements. And then I had to buy the software. So I'm paying for Adobe After Effects, $200 or $300 a year, whatever that is. And because my computer wasn't beefy enough to handle After Effects, I ended up having to buy a computer that could handle it, a computer that had a GPU. So the total cost and then the time of piecing all the hardware together, that took a lot of time and effort. Luxedo, you don't have to do that. That's one of their big pros, is it's got it all. It's got all that stuff in it. And then as you start to outgrow it, then you can look at some of these other options too. So that's cool. Another note, I'm trying to figure out how to mount and not simply lay it flat on the ground, something that can be left out. Yeah, and so I built my box with my Optima before I had the Luxedo. So I already had something up there, and we had to get ours off the ground. You look at this corner of the house here on the garage with the projector on the ground, it cast a massive shadow on this upper wall, and that's a big part of our canvas. I didn't want to cover something up. So I built this box. It's probably 6 feet tall to get the projector high enough where it would not cast a shadow. Since I already had that built, I just put the Luxedo on top of that. So I cheated. Do you know if they have any plans to increase the Luxedo units resolution? I don't know. This is speculation again, but I don't. Well, I probably shouldn't even speculate. I don't know. I don't know if they'll be able to keep the price near where it's at now, and the profit margins to get a nicer projector. But it does seem like they're listening to what people are experiencing and then trying to innovate and adapt to meet that need. So I think we'll have a lot of options in 2022. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? And I'll allow for that 20-second delay to see if any other questions come in. And if not, we'll just end early. I guess one other note is if you have questions after this, we do get a lot of messages. And so be patient with us if we don't respond right away. You can direct message us on our Facebook page at Baird Manor, and I'll respond to that as quick as I can. But we are getting quite a few requests since it's Christmas time. And we do also do custom shows. So that's something that we started this year as well. If somebody doesn't want to actually create the show, they just want us to create it for them, we can do that with the asterisk that Christmas we're fully booked. We've gotten more requests than we've been able to handle, and we've had to turn people away. So we're happy to look at projects for next year. If you want something done, we're happy to work with you on that. But Christmas, with how close we are to it, how many other projects, we won't be able to take on any other projects this year, I don't think. All right, I found factory refurbished units from Optima Direct. Not sure if the GT 1090 HDR. Yeah, it's a debate in some of the Facebook groups of projection mapping on if it's worth 1090. The general principle for me is as bright and as high of resolution as your budget will allow, because it's going to show. There was a significant difference between my ViewSonic and my Optima in terms of the quality of the show. So as much as your budget will allow. All right, when are we having the next chat? So I can do these as often as you guys want. I'm kind of going with the feel too on where people are having challenges or having questions. I've seen so many questions and so many requests in the Facebook groups and direct messages that I thought, okay, maybe if we just walk through a simple example, then that would help some folks out. So hopefully this was helpful. All right, got one more question from Know Your Joe. We'll give you a little bit of time here. We got 8 minutes still. We got time. And send me your shows too when you build them. It's fun to see what everybody's creating. And that's one of the great things with projection mapping is no two houses will ever be the same. Like I would be ecstatic if our whole neighborhood did it, because every house would be a little different, a little unique. It'd be fun if we're driving around at Christmas and we've got a gingerbread house and we've got a Santa castle and we've got one with synchronized light show, and that would just be cool. Even when we make the same show for different people, there's always little twists too. So it's fun to see what everybody's coming up with. So share what you're using. There are a couple Facebook groups I like too. Let's see, let me find. There's a Luxedo specific one. Luxedo. Oops. It's Luxedo users and enthusiasts. That's probably where a lot of you guys are coming from too. And there's also one for the holiday projection mapping. That one's beyond just Luxedo. Lots of Adobe After Effects, DaVinci Resolve, stuff like that. All right, about how long does it take to set up one's first show? I'm not sure if there's time to have something going for this year or just start working on it for next. It really depends on how much you want. At the simplest, you could drag an AtmosFX video onto your house and it will just, without masks or layers or any of that, and it'll still look great. So that's kind of one extreme, is you just put one video that's on the entire house, like your house is just a projection screen. But then it can go hours. There's one friend of ours in the community that I think for Halloween, what did she say? I think it was like an hour long show or more that she had. So it's the sky's the limit. It's whatever you want. But as you can see from this demo, we were able to put this together in about an hour. And so buffer it a bit with your own learning curve if you haven't used it before. But you can have something like this in about an hour. This one we did for Halloween that you've seen on our channel, that was probably about an hour as well. If I was going to do something bigger like our Halloween one like this, that would take a lot of time. I believe this is the future for decorating. I think so too. And I'm excited. That's the other thing with this technology curve. There may only be like one company that's doing this right now. More players will come on, more innovation will come, and it's just going to get better and better. DaVinci Resolve, I do have one video out there on it. It's also on my to-do list to learn. I haven't learned it yet, but there's an online course that I can give you the info to that's really good on DaVinci Resolve. And the big plus with that is it's free. It's free software. That helps cut the cost down. So feel free to DM me after this and I can give you the link to that. That's a good option too. After Effects is kind of the dominant one that most people use, but there's a lot of other good ones too. All right, that's probably a good place to wrap this up. This video should go to my channel. So if you want to go back and revisit some of the steps, then you can go ahead and do that. If you have a question, maybe check the videos first on our channel and see if it's already been answered. And then you can direct message us on Baird Manor on Facebook. Okay, so I hope that was helpful to everybody. I hope this helps you get something put together for Christmas and for the holidays. So thanks again for joining me. And if this is something that'll help you, then we'll do it again sometime.